Hey, it's Keythe Farley. You're watching the Codec. This is Thane from Mass Effect, and you're watching the Codec.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another episode of the Codec. I'm your host, Daly, and today we have another voice actor interview lined up for you today in 2018. Today we're being joined by Keythe Farley. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing fantastically.
Did I
Glad to be.
pronounce that correctly? Is it?
You did.
Okay, awesome. Well,
it's funny, I was hanging out with some folks over the weekend at GDC. I was with Katie and Katie, and I realized I've been hanging out with these guys for years that I've often been called Katie because my name, Keythe, in college was frequently like Keythe Farley. So I was like, hey, we're the three Katies.
It was, it's definitely a unique spelling. I was kind of off-put when I first saw it. I was like, is this correct? Is this a typo? Did I misspell this when I was doing my research? But anyways, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. I've got a special co-host with us. Some of you guys will recognize him from some of our previous interviews, and a lot of you will know him from BioWare Follower. We've got Tucker. How you doing today, sir?
Hello, everyone. Doing well.
Again, thank you for taking the time to co-host this interview with me. As soon as I confirmed our booking here with Keythe, I was like, I need to find somebody from the Mass Effect community to kind of help steer this ship. And I figured,
thanks for having me.
Yeah, I figured you guys would be the best. So let's start off with Keythe. I'm sure you get this question all the time. Let's start off with our standard little interview setup. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, and how you got into acting and then progressively into voice acting.
Wow. All right, here we go. I was always that kid, like when I was little, who just loved talking into microphones, and I still do. I would come home from school in 7 and 8 years old, and I had a little cassette recorder, and I would string the microphone up over a table lamp, and I had a little 45 record player, and I would just pretend that I was the DJ on the top 40 station. And that was my afternoons. That's the kind of fun that I like to have in the afternoons. And so that stayed with me and still stays with me. When I got into high school, we had a radio station on my high school campus, and that led to being a DJ at the top 40 radio station in Sacramento. KROY, I worked 2 to 8 a.m. Sunday mornings, which was where you start. A few years later, I ended up doing afternoon drive at a small radio station in Davis. And then I moved to Los Angeles to pursue a career in acting and kind of left radio behind. Did some face work after college at UCLA, Full House, Beverly Hills 90210, a bunch of other small parts on big shows. And then I went to work at Klasky Csupo, the animation company that did Rugrats, did the early seasons of The Simpsons back in the Tracy Ullman days when Fox was just a fledgling network starting out. Worked there for 3 years in the production. So I started as a PA, worked my way up to production manager, associate producer, did some work on the Spy vs. Spy interstitials for Mad TV, which was probably the best job I had because it involved reading Mad magazines all day. Okay. And picking out my favorite Spy vs. Spy cartoons and then making sure they got animated and got into the Mad TV shows.
Very cool.
And then after about 3 years there, they approached me and asked me if I'd be interested in taking over the job of voice directing Rugrats, which I was thrilled to do. And here's where it all comes back to the talking into microphones bit. When I was working at Klasky in production, they would send around these cassettes that would say episode 805 radio play. And I realized that the radio plays that I loved, all the suspense and the Orson Welles and Dragnet and all those great radio plays that I'd been listening to, that this was where all that work went, was into producing animated series, that these were radio plays that were then animated to come to life. Now, Cartoon Network does it differently, Hanna-Barbera did it differently. Right. They draw first and then talk later. But at Klasky, we talked first and drew to what the performers did.
Very cool.
So I realized like I was in the right place, and I got into that room with those geniuses, with E.G. Daly and Kath Soucie and Chris Kavanaugh and the rest of the team. And I was off to the races as a voice director. About the same time, I had a musical that I'd written called Bat Boy the Musical, which was starting to get some heat. And so writing and directing kind of took over the acting for a while. But in the actually in the late aughts, the early teens, I put my toe back into the acting waters and ended up with the VO agent. And that's about the time that I booked Thane and started booking commercials and Fallout and all this work that I'm doing now. Plus the Rugrats series led to Rugrats video games, which sort of put me in the director's chair for some great games. God of War, Skylanders, and Black Ops 3s, and Final Fantasy 15, which we just wrapped a huge 3 years on. So it's been an exciting ride, and now I'm proprietor of this room here, the VO Lounge, which is just 2 weeks old, and I've got a booth here in my home and a lovely place for teaching and kind of bringing the next generation. There are so many folks as I go to conventions across the country that I meet and see who are interested and eager to get into voiceover, and I want to try to help make that process as smooth and easy as it can possibly be. So that's my long story short, if that's not too late.
No, definitely. I think it's very, very interesting. It's especially interesting because I host this show every single week, and not normally do I get to speak to an actual voice director. I've had Chris Zimmerman on, and that is about the extent of my voice directors who have been on.
He's a good one.
Definitely.
Good one to have.
What I think is very interesting for you in particular is not only do you do the directing, but you do the acting as well. Right. So our first kind of mainline question is, for you, what's the biggest kind of transition going into like voice acting a character like Thane or Kellogg versus being a director? Is it ever tough for you to kind of say, okay, I'm acting now, I've got to let this director do their thing? Or do you feel like you've got so much experience that it's oftentimes good to kind of help them understand what they may be doing if they're newer?
No, I would never presume to try to out-direct somebody when I'm working as an actor. I always tell students, and it's definitely my approach, that the actor and the director too, to a certain extent, are really servants. We're servants to the writer who has taken the time to craft this dialogue and tell this story. And we're servants to the audience. The actor is the conduit between the writer and the audience. So it's our job to bring the story that's been created as clearly as we possibly can to the intended audience. And it's really that simple. So directors don't usually get in the way. Most of the time you're under such a time constraint that it's, there's so much to do that unlike a commercial VO, they want to hear it 10 ways from Sunday, which is fine. So if you're doing a 30-second spot, you may do it 30 or 40 different ways. And then each line, 3 or 4 or 10 different ways, and which is fine and fun. But when you've got 10 hours of gameplay, or 50 hours, or 100 hours if it's a Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3, or Final Fantasy 15, you got to move. Right. So you look for actors who have keen instincts, who can key in really quickly to a line. I've worked a lot with Darren DePaul, and he has a spectacular approach, which I've always adopted. And the first one is sort of, the A take is usually his initial response to the line.
Okay.
The B take is sort of a self-directed take, where he sort of makes a little adjustment based on what he's hearing and what he's doing. And then the third take, he usually just tries something out of the blue.
Okay.
And usually, it's the A take is usually, he's got, his instincts are so solid that it's often the A take, frequently the B take. And when those C takes kind of come in from left field and you get that read that's off the beaten path but still opens up the line in a way that you never expected, those are magic moments. And so that's kind of what you look for. And it's an approach that I think, there's lots of ways to approach voice acting. Everybody's different. But I like the Darren DePaul approach. That's sort of...
That's very interesting. I like that.
Instinct, direction, and anything goes.
Good variety. Tucker, you want to go ahead and take a question, buddy?
Sure. I asked on Twitter some people just what questions do they have, and oddly enough, one of the biggest questions that I've seen, not just with this, but just in general about Thane, is what are your thoughts on the movie Shape of Water?
I saw that a lot too.
Yeah, I had a Facebook post after Shape of Water won the Academy Award this year, where I took the creature from the Black Lagoon and Thane and the Shape of Water character and put them side by side. I was like, this is great company. Proud to be in the sort of fish man, tradition. So somewhere in the middle there between the creature from the Black Lagoon and the Shape of Water guy is Thane. So it was lovely that I think it's reading interviews with Guillermo del Toro, and he was saying, like, when he saw the creature from the Black Lagoon, he was rooting for the monster to get the girl. And that
he wanted the romance of the Black Lagoon.
Right, the romance of the Black Lagoon, exactly. And so Mass Effect, I think, did that very effectively. And Shape of Water did it very beautifully. And so, yeah, it's exciting. And as someone who, I'm the author of a musical about a half bat, half boy. I also, and that's what I said, I think, on the Twitter feed, was I wrote a story about a monster, and I got to play a monster who gets the girl. So it's been very gratifying to know that the work that we're doing out here in the trenches is being appreciated by fans.
Very cool. Does that wrap up that question, Tucker?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So my next question for you has to do a little bit about the process of Mass Effect. You talked a little bit earlier about how massive the voice work can be, but I want to go back to Mass Effect 2, where we're first kind of introduced to Thane, really kind of developing his character, and by far one of the best games in the franchise. What was it like for you, kind of going in, seeing like the storyboard for this character, whatever they give you? We know that it's very limited sometimes, and oftentimes it's maybe just a picture or two. But tell me about the process of creating this voice for Thane and how it was described to you in the booth originally.
Well, he was the sides that came out, the specs for the character came out, and it was a monk assassin, which I think is just such a fascinating character. Someone who has who's a badass with a weapon, but who also has a deep sense of connection to a higher purpose. I think is those characters fascinate me. So it was really fun. I was at a friend's house having dinner, actually, and I remembered that I had this audition that was due, and he had a studio in his home, and so I begged him after dinner if we could just run in and just do this real quick. And so he said, yeah, as long as if you get this job, you take me out to lunch. I said, yeah, of course. If I get this gig, I'll definitely take you out to lunch. And I didn't hear from them for 3 or 4 months. So it was like, that was in the spring, and I think in the summer I finally got the call that I had the role. And so I called my buddy up and I was like, hey, what do you want to do for lunch? It was great. So, but once we got into the booth, the thing that was most fascinating to me was the branching dialogue.
Okay.
We've done a little bit of that on Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2, which I directed. Cool. In the hub, you could approach any of the characters in a sort of neutral way, in a friendly way, or in an aggressive way, and they would respond in kind. So it was very simple branching dialogue. But when they showed me the mechanic, that was the first day on the set, was showing you this mechanic of these 3 different choices, and you could branch any way you wanted to go. I just thought that was brilliant. I mean, that was just a whole new revelation for me. And working through each scene, and you would sort of go from top to bottom in the scene, and then you would hit the branch point, kick, and then go on another little journey. And then from there might be another branch that would go and kick to a third. And that whole process was a heck of a lot of fun. It wasn't just, so often when we're in the booth, we're just doing look out, get down, over here, over there, above you, below you, in front of you, behind you, to the left, to the right. And this was just an opportunity to play.
Right.
And then with the technology that came in as the games progressed, frequently I was able to hear the other performers and be able to play off them. Once their dialogue was recorded, it kind of went in to this flow that allowed me to play off of them, which we did a lot of in Final Fantasy 15 too. That whoever the actor that came in fourth got the benefit of being able to hear all the other and be able to come in there. So it was really terrific, and working with a great director. I mean, Ginny McSwain is the best in the business. She's a hero of mine, and an old theater hat like myself. So we had a lot of fun shooting the shit about theater, and we just kind of come from the same space and the same place. And so it was like working with an old friend right out of the gate.
Well, there you go. Now, when you're developing that voice for Thane, this kind of just a follow-up, can you describe that particular process? So just not super in-depth, but like on day one when they sit you down, how do you guys create that actual voice? Is it something that just comes off of the demo that you submit for the audition, or do you guys sit down and say, okay, well, give me a little bit more of this or a little bit less of that?
Right. I think now I can think about it like what I was doing, but a lot of it is instinctual. You do this long enough, you have a sense of what a character wants to be. So I think looking back on it, there was the monk aspect, which wanted to keep him centered, so that the character, without any effect at all, would just be really simple, really straight. He's sure of himself. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's locked in here. And then the badass, the fact that he's a badass with the gun, he's got that little edge, kind of brings in the Clint Eastwood just a little bit. And so, you know what I mean? Bringing it in and giving it that sort of flavor that Thane has when you drop into it down here. But keeping it simple, but throwing in the Clint Eastwoody sort of breathy, aspirated quality. And then they processed it to make it sound dry. That's what I think. Like
he's incredibly different from the
Drell. It was because the Drell, they're very they come from a very dry planet, so it did kind of make sense of. Yep,
it was absolutely it was perfect. A perfect amount of processing.
Yeah, it's not incredibly different from the voice that you just gave us. I mean, obviously there's that tinge that they add to it, but it's not super different than the actual voice, which is neat. Tucker, you gonna take the next question, buddy?
Yeah. How did you feel about the community's response to Thane? He was one of the biggest characters that were in promotions besides Miranda. Thane was like one of the poster boys for the game. So how did you feel about that, as well as the character being a romance character and other situations like that?
Well, it was funny because I had no idea that they were pushing Thane as much as they did. I mean, we're sort of kept in the dark on the promo aspect of it, and I really didn't know until I was in Costco and the box was on the shelf. And I was like, "Holy crap! I made the box! This is unbelievable!" And I was picking it up, like, "Whoa, that's my character! Wow!" I was really thrilled by it.
Cool.
And the fan response has just been tremendous. And again, to be able to play a character that is the writing. I mean, again, it comes back to that idea of the servant, to the writing and getting it across to the player. That the writing is just so strong in Mass Effect 2, which is where I had most of my story play out.
Right.
That I think it's just a credit to the writing. I didn't have to do much to help the writing along. I just kind of got out of the way, had a good idea of the voice print, and it was really fun when we were doing the memory, the Drell memory stuff. We just settled on the idea of, we called it Shatnering the dialogue. Just sort of breaking it up a bit and making it sound Shatner-esque.
I like it.
Which was a technical issue, but it's sort of that idea that it's overwhelming, and so it's all coming at once, and I lose the ability to speak. So that was fun, too. And like I said, I think the fans are responding to the way the character is shaped.
Sorry.
It's quite all right. Mine could show up at any moment. The way the character was shaped. I mean, it was this idea of this assassin monk who's tortured by what he has to do, and to try to keep your son from following in your footsteps, and then ultimately to be able to have that great death scene in Mass Effect 3, to be able to say goodbye to everybody. I mean, it's just great writing. It's very sort of the best drama, the best, that just tugs on the heartstrings, and also he gets to be a badass. He also is a kick-ass assassin.
Yeah.
So I was just thrilled. Again, you don't always know going in whether you're a main character or a secondary character, whether it's going to be one session or 50. So once I realized, Thane's kind of a big deal. That was kind of neat.
Very cool.
Yeah, and then kind of building off of what you brought up, what did you feel about Thane? What did you feel about Thane's relationship with Keythe?
Well, it's as a father, and as a human being, you get to a certain point where you look at your own life. You start to realize that there's more behind you than there is in front of you. And when you're looking at your kids, you want them to avoid those pitfalls that you made in your life. And so it's a very, very human, a great human place to key into, right, of this guy who wants to make sure that his son avoids the mistakes that he made. And so I think that's a really powerful, and again, that sort of plays all the way across age groups too, because I think that young people, everybody wants to protect the kid, right?
Yeah, definitely.
You want to protect your child. That's the whole idea. You want to keep the species going, right? And so that appeals to, and the fact that he has a heart, that he has regrets, that he has changes that he wants to make in his life, just make him a more appealing character, I think.
I wish we could have had you on 2 weeks ago. I actually had the voice actor for Keythe on 2 weeks ago.
Quentin Flynn?
Quentin Flynn, yeah, he's a good friend of mine. He comes on our show at least 3-4 times a year because he loves this show. I don't know why he does, but
enormously talented, lovely guy. I have worked with many, many times, and I just adore him.
Yeah, he had similar words for you actually when we interviewed him, and that's actually when I started to message you about bringing you on the show.
Excellent.
We were talking about Mass Effect, and I was like, you know what, we really need to talk to Keythe about this kind of stuff, because we get his side, and it's interesting to hear what you thought about it. So that's a great question, Tucker. Thanks for that follow-up. I want to talk a little bit about the progression from Mass Effect 2 to Mass Effect 3. Obviously, technology increases, the amount of voice dialogue increases, particularly for Thane. You get a couple of badass scenes in Mass Effect 3. Going from 2, seeing what the character was and how popular it was, did you expect to be dying in Mass Effect 3, or was that kind of a surprise to you?
I sort of joined the folks who were holding out for a cure. I have to say, from a character standpoint and from a livelihood standpoint, right, I was hoping there'd be a cure and a spin-off and the whole nine.
There are the comics.
Right, exactly. In alternate universes where he is cured. And there was a lot of fan, but I can't tell you how much fun it is to play a deathbed scene.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's probably pretty awesome, especially the send off that they give you there, and I'm sure it's a little bit maybe obscure to just hear it in the booth, but once you get to see the everything coming together with the visuals,
the animations and such.
How was that for you and the director when you guys are doing that scene? How many times did you have to do it, and did you feel like the one that they picked and the one that you guys went with, was that like the end all be all Thane death scene?
Yeah, it was. Absolutely. It was a lot of fun. I mean, again, those sort of scenes are really fun because you get to play at something without it actually having to be true. So it's really great. And that idea of, it's kind of, it's the dream too. It's like you want to have your loved ones around you in that at that moment. And so it's just, again, I have to go back and credit the writers and the folks who developed this story, who really did a beautiful job of taking this character and giving you hope, and then realizing that hope is not going to pan out, and then giving him just a really beautiful send-off, I think was powerful. It would have been easy to sort of have a side quest, where you go and on a fetch quest to get all the ingredients to, put together to make the serum that's going to cure him. That's kind of rhymes, doesn't it? The serum to cure him.
There you go.
But the fact that they didn't do that, the fact that they gave the players who loved Thane, I can't tell you how many folks come up to me at cons and just say that they wept openly in that scene. So again, that's just a testament to the power of the way they shaped this character, to the writing, and to the design, to the game design, to the animations, just to the way they made it a really beautiful story from start to finish.
Very cool. Tucker, go ahead and take the next one, buddy.
Were there any outside influences for your take on Thane's character, and have you used Thane as an influence in any of your other characters?
I think it's funny that I was cutting a little demo reel thing together, and I realized that Thane and Kellogg are both assassins.
Yeah, so to speak.
So I got the assassin area all taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's funny because that it was so Star Trek. Because he's very Spock in his sort of, but then he's very Shatner
right.
in the memory trance. So those influences definitely. The Spock and the sort of very thoughtful approach to everything that happens, and the very logical thoughts about and what he's had to do to compartmentalize the assassin part. That he's just a tool. That you don't blame the gun, it's the person who pulled the trigger, and I'm just the gun, I'm just the hired hand. Is very Spock.
I actually think that's a quote in one of the trailers.
Yeah.
Very cool. No, I feel like when you're talking about Thane and you mentioned Kellogg, I've got a question for you, and this isn't picking a character per se, but what do you feel is more to your strength? Do you like playing the good guy that you have in somebody like Thane, where he's doing this particular mission for good to kind of redeem himself for the bad things, so you can kind of classify him as a good guy here now, obviously maybe not so much before, but he's on the path now to help save not just humanity but his entire existence. And then you have somebody like Kellogg who's he's just a bad guy. Which one do you like playing more?
It's funny because when you follow Kellogg's track, you also get a little bit of the backstory about how he became who he was and the regrets that he has. The writers really took great pains to humanize the guy who shot your spouse in the face and stole your child. Right. So I give a lot of. I got to give props to the writers for doing a great job. But in terms of meeting fans, it's a lot more fun to meet the Thane fans than to meet the Kellogg fans. Their approach, the Thane fans' approach is, "Oh my God, I love you," and the Kellogg approach is, "I kicked your ass."
Yeah, my girlfriend hates you. She cried when when you killed her husband in the game and took her baby. She was very upset.
Yeah.
She was very upset, and she's gonna laugh when she finds out I interviewed.
It's really funny because you don't know going in. So
right, exactly.
I started playing Fallout 4, and I'm sitting there like,
That's interesting that you play.
Oh, go get in the vault. Okay, I'm in the vault, and then like all of a sudden there's like there's some bald dude running out there, and all of a sudden I hear like, it's my voice. It was like,
hey, that's me.
Oh, that's me. Oh crap.
That's very cool.
Me?
Yeah.
I because you don't know when you're doing this stuff. You know what the context is, but I didn't realize it was like it's the inciting incident of the story. It's what kicks the narrative off. Is you watch this dude come in and kill your loved ones and steal your child. It's I was like, oh, all right, come and get me.
There you go, Tucker. You want to take the next question? Oh, did he freeze?
Frozen solid.
I thought he was just giving us an intense stare.
Yeah, he is.
We'll see if he should connect back here shortly. I'll just go ahead and continue on with the next part then. So we've talked a little bit about two of the very popular games that you have, but you also have a couple other ones under your belt that I wanted to talk about. And these in particular are a little bit different. So you've got Thane, who's your very thematic, very drama focused. You've got Kellogg, who's a little bit more actiony and westerny style. But you also have these crazy characters in Skylanders that you lend your voice to. Tell me what it's like going into the booth, having to do these weird grunts and growls and these guttural type things. Is it ever tough on your voice? Just kind of give me the rundown of being a Skylanders character.
It's so much fun. God, it's so much fun. We did a series of commercials for Skylanders as well with Eruptor, and those were great because within the toy, there's only so much room on the chip, so you've got to get these about 150 lines. You got to get these little bursts in the, and they all got to be really short, really quick. There's not a lot of room to fool around. But once I got in the room with the folks from the ad agency, we would just mess around. They would always give me just like, all right, you're free, do whatever you want.
Have fun.
A lot of that stuff made it into the commercials, so that was really fun. Eruptor's definitely a throat ripper. I could kind of do them when I'm just like hanging out like this. If it's just really, quiet and just talking, I could do him for a good long time. But the problem is he's often the volume, and when you add the volume to that character, it starts to push a lot of air through those chords, and then it gets you get pretty tired pretty fast.
I bet. I can imagine.
The other one that few people know is the dream. I'm the dream sheep, or no, I'm the dream sheep. The sleep dragon in the 3D NES version.
went from a sheep to a dragon.
Yeah, and he's more like this. He's kind of a little bit dim, and he's guarding the gate. But really, I have trouble staying awake. If you could bring me some bacon, that would be nice. So it's really fun to be able to. A
little bit of Christopher Walken in there.
Just the slightest touch. Just a little sprinkling of Walken. It's always necessary. Yeah,
I like it. It's funny that the way you describe this is almost word for word the same way that I had the guy that plays Drill, Chris Fries. He plays the Drill character, and it's interesting talking about Skylanders because, like you said, it's a little bit of a different approach to how they do voice recordings and stuff like that. It seems like Tucker is back, so I'm going to let him take the next question. But to kind of tail off on Skylanders, Is it ever difficult for you having to jump back and forth between playing all of these different types of characters? Because you have a couple that you do for Skylanders, but you also do a couple for Mass Effect. You did other voices besides Thane. What's that like, trying to say, okay, this voice belongs to this person, this one is this one, this one is this one, and then pitching that correctly every time you go into the booth?
It's fun. I mean, it really is. I mean, that's the joy of it. It's fun to just be, to use my natural speaking voice like this for commercials or whatever. But I grew up kind of loving the character actors,
Right.
And when you're a fan of, you grow up on cartoons and you hear all these crazy, wacky voices, and that's always been the fun of it, is what you can do with just this, just this instrument. And pitching things up, pitching things down, talking out of the side of your mouth makes it different, and being able to play like that. I mean, that's what we performers and creatives and writers, and that's what we're doing, is we're playing. So it's always fun to play. I mean, when you get an opportunity to do something, and then the challenge of it is to make it as different as possible, so that people don't recognize that it's Thane. So if I'm down here and I'm doing Thane, and I'm in here and it's very... I want to go up here for another character, I want to be in a much higher voice so no one will know.
Are you being attacked by a British person?
Yes.
Very cool. All right, Tucker, we are good for your next question. However, you are frozen on our screens. Could you turn your camera off and then back on? Maybe that'll fix it.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with my internet.
You were giving us the most. There you go. We had the most intense stare for a minute.
I apologize.
It's all good.
No, it was a good one. Intimidating.
Oh, okay. So, kind of like going back with Thane, how much of Thane have you learned? Like, have you played the games yourself? Have you been reading the comics that have Thane in it? How much have you kept up with the character?
I keep up with the fans more than I actually am able to keep up with the character. I found that my video game time has sort of drifted off as I've raised my children. There's just so much to do in a day when you've got kids that are coming home from school and trying to get them up and get them ready for bed. Then you want to spend a little bit of alone time with your significant other. And I've just found that sadly, my time for gaming has dwindled. Now my kids are getting ready to head off to college. I'm hoping to go back, but there's such a backlog of great games that I feel like I might have to go back to hook up the PS2 and get a little time on God of War 2 just to get my thumbs back.
You should absolutely have your kids play Mass Effect. Do they know that you're the voice for one of the characters?
Yeah, they do. They do, and occasionally they'll. It's just funny. I mean, occasionally they know they can. My kid asked me one time, and this is sort of a weird story to tell, but she asked me one time when she was little. She said, "Dad, are you famous?" And I said, "Well, I have a small fame and a weird fame." I said, "For people who know video games, who know Mass Effect or who know God of War, they would kind of freak out." I said, "People who know musicals would know Bat Boy and they kind of freak out." I said, "But really that's kind of tiny and it's very, very segmented." So the answer is no. No, I'm not, because I get to go to the store with you and there isn't a bank of photographers waiting outside for me. And I know I have a few friends who are properly famous, and it really limits your ability to move in the world. It's a double-edged sword. I mean, doors fly open for you. I mean, it's great to be with those people if you want to get a dinner reservation. But for the rest of the time, it's a tough life. So this is a great life, where it's great. You get that appreciation from fans, and you get the love from the fans. But you also, they don't necessarily know who you are unless somebody tells them. So it's a neat little balance.
Okay. Very interesting. That actually kind of ties into a fan question that I had asked. This question comes from It's Legion from our Mass Effect Reddit.
Oh, hey.
And he wanted to know, have you ever been recognized strictly by your voice, maybe out in public?
I wonder. I don't think so.
No?
I don't think so, because Thane, I mean, my voice rides right in here, you know. Okay. I don't do a lot of talking down here. You know, I don't do a lot of Thane, you know. Hey, I'll have a double latte and a maple nut scone. You know, that doesn't, people are like, oh, wait a minute, I know you. And, you know, also, interestingly, is that I don't think people, and especially I'm not out as a Ruptor, you know, it's like,
right.
Yeah, for Christ with that, you bet. But people aren't, generally speaking, are visually oriented. Right. Those of us who are audio freaks, the ones who sat in their bedroom playing records and talking into microphones, we're fewer and further between. So people aren't using their ears in the same way that we do. So I don't think the recognition doesn't often come from
I can see that.
The voice. I do sometimes. I used to get recognized as Chris Noth from Sex and the City. Oh. And when I was a little younger, people used to always say, "Are you that guy? You're Mr. Big." I'm like, nope, not me. Younger.
That's funny.
People visually make those connections. And,
right. Yeah, no, I can
so
see that happen.
Auditorily.
I tend to recognize that voice actors everywhere because I do this. You know, this is my job, is interviewing awesome voice actors. But I see that all the time. Like I know this guy. He's in a video game. He does this voice, and somebody would be like, "What are you talking about? Who's that?" And I'm like, "Well, you probably learned." That's the whole point of doing this show, is we want to shed some light on awesome, amazing voice talent that brings these characters to life. I mean, you give a lot of credit to the writers and the directors, and they definitely deserve it. But you know, I always say, you know, think about your favorite character, and if it was voiced by somebody else, it might not be your favorite character. So. Definitely props to you for all your work. Tucker, do you have another question?
When it came to voicing Thane and things like that, you worked with some of the other voice actors. What were some fun interactions that you had with them, or just what were some other voice actors that you enjoyed working with in Mass Effect?
You know, we all recorded separately, so we were never in the booth together. There was occasionally
rare to get that.
Very rare in video games. More common in animated series. When you're doing 11 minutes, you can throw everybody in the booth, or 22 or whatever. But for a 10-hour, 50-hour game, you do it singly. I met Jen Hale one night at a party. She was there, and when I introduced myself to her, I was like, "You may not know this, but you and I have made out in a video."
That is a surefire way to introduce yourself to someone.
Yeah. So I haven't spoken to her since, but it was a nice meeting. Maybe I should approach differently next time. No, actually, Jen and I are I love her, and we're very, very close.
That's awesome.
But I couldn't let that one go by. I couldn't let it go by.
Very, very, very understandable. Okay, this one comes from, I know we're getting a little short on time, so I'll kind of speed these up here. This will be a 2-in-1. This one comes from Firecrafty, and the first part of his question is, how do you feel your character was utilized in-game for Fallout 4? He's referring to Kellogg, and were you disappointed to find out that there was no peaceful option for ending the kind of feud between yourself and the player character?
Nah, you got to kill him.
Yeah, I think no. They feel the same way. We had Brian Delaney and oh my god, I'm blanking on the female protagonist. We had them both
Taylor.
on. Yes, Miss Taylor.
Yeah.
We had them both on a dual. They were sitting on the same couch doing an interview with us, and we were talking specifically about your character. And they gave us some in-game lines about their feelings towards Kellogg. So I think
Yeah, there are a couple of F-bombs in there, I think, as I recall. Yeah.
The last part of his question was, is there any other character or game type that you would like to voice a role in?
Ooh, that's a good one. I just did a game, an independent game, called Where the Water Tastes Like Wine.
Actually being very well received.
It has been very well received. I think it's really groovy because it's about storytelling, which again is a passion of mine. Right. Whether I'm acting or writing or directing, it's all about telling stories. And so to be able to sit down with, I think I had maybe 120, 150 pages of stories that I got to read through. That was a treat. Just to be able to spin these yarns. There goes mine. Was a great treat, and that was a real nice departure from a lot of the stuff that I've been doing, where you're just like, I see you there, and you come after him. I would love to do one that's a little more, that's grittier. Okay. I mean, that's in the sort of, although Fallout 4 is very sort of gritty, but one that just takes place in a very,
I feel like you have the voice for it. I know exactly what you're talking about. Like, your voice fits really well into something like a Metal Gear Solid or a Splinter Cell or something like that's just the world's bad and these are bad guys and good guys fighting each other. Like, your voice has that perfect. I would like to see in something like that. Go ahead.
I'd be happy to do it.
Tucker, you get your next question.
No, you could throw in another community question.
Okay, perfect. All right, well, this will be the last one that I have for you before we get to the wrap-up part. This one was kind of a collective question. It comes from, I guess, all the different types of communities. They want to know, moving forward, what is your aspiration for playing either villains or heroes? Which do you prefer? We kind of touched on that a little bit earlier. But for you personally, what do you more enjoy? Do you like the more kind of animated type of stuff maybe you see from like Skylanders where it's all fun, or do you prefer something like Fallout?
Boy, I just you love to work in this business. I mean, that's what it's all about. It's like you're happy to have the gig when the gigs are coming, and but if I had to choose, it's really hard because the bad guys are the most fun. The good guys, the protagonists, get the most work.
Right.
And the characters are just an absolute blast. Those are like a treat when they come along. When you get to do something that's really wacky,
right,
and fun, particularly in the video game world, those are just a treat. I mean, all the characters I played in Skylanders, from the skeleton bones to Wildfire to Eruptor to Sleep Dragon, I'm all over that game in all sorts of different kooky ways. There's old guys, young guys. So the character-y stuff is a joy. The bad guys are really fun, and the good guys, that's where the money is.
Right, definitely.
That's where you get the most sessions. So not to be too
no, it makes sense.
To be too practical about it. The practical part of my brain goes like, I'd like to have 50 to 100 sessions. The artist says, the bad guy is really fun, and the kid in me says, let's play.
Yeah.
Let's make voices.
There you go. Okay. So. Well, I'll wrap up my line of questions with the staple of our show for this year so far. We're asking all of our voice actors that we have on, if you had to choose one, okay, strictly as a voice actor. I know you're a voice director, so for you may have kind of a mixed opinion on this, but speaking strictly as an actor, if you could have your entire script beforehand, have a detailed dialogue of like what character you're playing, who he is, pictures, and your entire script, or if you could voice ensemble with anybody you had voice lines with, which is kind of more important to you?
Okay, so it's a choice between either having the script ahead of time or
ensemble work.
Ensemble work?
Yes, with your fellow voice actors.
I would rather do the ensemble work. I would much rather do the ensemble work because, again, it's that sense of play. I think that video game voice actors in particular are really, really sharp, smart human beings. And they're able to pick up a script because we do it so often that the script is, you walk into a booth and you haven't seen anything, and there's a script and a microphone and you got to bring the world to life. And that takes a very special type of actor.
Right.
I worked with celebrities who had a really difficult time without having the scripts ahead of time to prepare and do all this work. Whereas the best people in the business are the ones who can just come in and wing. So if I got to spend the day, I had one of the highlights of my career was on a little cartoon called Winx Club, where I played King Neptune. And I got to be in the booth one day after I did my little Neptune pickups with D. Bradley Baker. And D and I sat there for an hour and a half just doing monsters together. The director was like, okay, you do the monsters that are swimming up at the top half of the screen, and Keythe, you do the monster on the lower half. D, I want you to do your sort of high-pitched shit, and Keythe, you with the nasty guys. And that was a dream come true, because I have such respect for D. When he came in on Rugrats as Reptar, I instantly formed a man crush that has never stopped growing. And to be able to sit next to him and work alongside him doing that kind of work, that's as good as it gets. So if I could be in a room with Dee or Fred Tatasciore, Steve Bloom, any of these greats, Courtney Taylor, I would do it in a heartbeat. Over having the script ahead of time where I have to sit here in my office by myself going like, they're just
completely understandable.
Get in the room and play with fun people.
Yeah, I think personally, I have a lot of respect, like you said, for anybody that can come in there and pick up a script and make it sound like there are other people in the booth. Because that's a common misconception is, these things are so well put together and the voices are so well done. It seems like everybody's in the room together recording this, but, having done this show for so long, I find that it's not. I'm happy to say that I'm seeing more and more like indie titles and like mid-tier studios start to actually do ensemble work. So I'm hoping,
do it.
As the years progress, we get into something, even if it's not in the same room, if you guys have some kind of high quality audio, like you have like, Skype's, not the best example because the audio isn't the best, but if you had some kind of great program like that, to where everybody could just act together, I think that would just add that little bit of touch that animes and animated stuff have over some video games. That's it from us. I'm going to pass it over to Tucker to ask any kind of remaining questions, and then when he's done, we'll do our kind of outro.
I don't think I really have any remaining questions, but I do want to apologize on the aspect that Thane did not always survive my Mass Effect 2 playthroughs.
Never even made it to Mass Effect 3.
Most of the time he did. Sometimes he didn't.
Well,
there were times he did.
There were times that he didn't. That was also fun to sort of play that, being overrun and swarmed and dying, but knowing that there was an option too where I survived. So
right. Was that weird for you in the booth to go, okay, wait, I thought I died. Why am I still doing stuff? Or did they kind of explain that to you?
Well, again, that was that branching dialogue. And it was just that sort of like, okay, now here's the version of the
where
scene
you die.
where you're overrun by Reapers. And
okay, I have a quick question that's on that side note of which death was the most fun to record, not the official one, but of the side deaths.
Gosh, it was so long ago. I remember that deathbed scene so vividly. The other ones were just sort of like, in standard run of the mill, just getting pulled apart and eaten alive, which are all
standard
standard
stuff you do. Yeah,
that's kind of stuff you do. Guess what you do.
Very cool. All right, well, that'll wrap up the interview. Before we let you go, a couple of housekeeping things here. Let's talk about what's kind of on the horizon for Keythe? You mentioned you have a new place here where you're hoping to coach voice actors. I got to tell you, we have a lot of voice actors on. They give a lot of different tips. We've heard everything from eating a green apple before you go in to taking acting classes at your local. What's kind of your tip? And then tell us a little bit about what you have going on there with coaching.
Sure. This is a room that was in the middle of my home that we just converted into a studio space. Fully functional recording studio, soundproof, tricked out audio-wise. And it also has this beautiful seating for 8 to 10 students. So I'm really moving into, in addition to directing and acting, into coaching. I'm at that point now in my career where I've worked with everybody in the business, and I'm eager, and the more that I meet these young folks who are coming up, again, just to bring them along and help them to have a smooth transition into a career as an actor or as a voice actor or in any way. So I'm available for private coaching. I'm available for group classes. The website is KeytheFarley.com. And you can get most of the information. Everything that you need to know to get in touch with me can be found there. And classes and workshops and one-on-ones via Skype or Hangouts or Zoom or whatever you use.
Very cool.
Are all available right now.
Awesome. Well, if you guys are looking for that, it'll be in the description down below for a post on YouTube if you're looking for that. It's also, if you're watching live, it is actually just below his picture where you see him on the screen. He's actually looking at it right now. You can visit that website, and then also his Twitter handle is there. If maybe there's a question we didn't get to ask today that you guys watching at home maybe wanted to ask, there's his Twitter account there, and make sure you follow him and show him some love from the Codec crew here. Before we go, I need to ask you, what is a project or a game or a show, doesn't have to be gaming related, just anything that you feel you've done that's maybe underappreciated that you want somebody to check out? What's something cool that Keythe's done that anybody who likes and wants to follow you should go check out?
Wow. If you don't know Bat Boy the Musical, you should.
There you go. That's a good place to start.
That's off the beaten path.
Yeah, definitely.
Of the video game voiceover world. It's a show that I wrote, and it's available Samuel French, or it's on Amazon. You can listen to the soundtrack on Spotify.
There you go.
It's a groovy little piece.
Awesome. Okay, well, to wrap up, Keythe, we like to have our voice actors do a intro for our post recording thing here for YouTube. Would you be willing to give us a couple of voice lines?
Sure.
All right. They're pretty simple. I've got two. I don't know if Tucker maybe had one in mind for it because we have separate channels. If you have a separate one, that'd be fine. If not, I'd like. Can you do a Thane? I know we don't have our fancy voice altering software, but could you give us a close Thane?
Sure.
All right. The dialogue is this is Thane from Mass Effect, and you're watching the codec, and then I'll have you do another one in your regular voice saying your regular name, your real name, not regular.
Okay. This is Thane from Mass Effect, and you're watching the codec. Or, hey, it's Keythe Farley. You're watching the codec.
Awesome. Thank you so much, sir. I definitely appreciate all your time. Tucker, thank you for co-hosting. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We definitely appreciate all the love and support that we got today.
Thanks, everybody.
Keythe, before we let you go...
Here. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, before we let you go, anything you want to say to anybody watching?
Hey, jump over and follow me on Twitter. I'm always available to answer questions. I don't get to Twitter all the time, but I check it a couple times a day. So come on over and you can grab me there. Or Keythe Farley is Kick-Ass Voiceover on Facebook. That's another place where you can find me. Try to drop stuff in there all the time if I can. So this is a pleasure, you guys. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for taking the
time. Really
time.
Fun hour.
Oh,
yeah, this was really cool.
Definitely. Thank you to both you guys again. Tucker, I'll have everything over to you. Keythe, you have a great rest of your day, and I'm sure we'll keep in touch with you. I'm sure you got some projects coming up. Maybe we'll invite you back on the show in a couple of months.
Love to do it.
All right, awesome. Thank you. Have a good
Thank
day,
you guys.
Bye.
See ya.